Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sergeant's Talk TV. I'm Big
Hello,
Mike,
hello, everybody.
and that's my battle buddy Jason. We're here tonight. Tonight's subject that in the chat we want you to be as involved as you can is about the bottom line of this is family stress and what causes that, and how us as service members contributed to that stress. Okay, so
We
it's
would
going to be about
never, no, not us.
mission readiness, combat deployment, and family stress. That's what it's about. Because families, as service members, we pack our A, B, and C bags and we're out the door and we're gone. The spouse, if you have a family, if you're a single soldier, it's whoever's is left in the rear with the gear to watch all your stuff in your barracks room and stuff like that. But it's the family members that you leave behind. It's the spouse, male or female, who's got to keep that family unit together. When you're so used to being a dual parenting family, and then you go straight in to being a single mom or a single dad, which you really are, and you have to do everything and you can't split the duties no more. That brings a lot of stress on families. So that's what we're going to talk about. Sorry about that. And we got a special guest for you tonight. Okay. We're not going to reveal who the guest is until we get done saying hello to a few people in here that pay our bills.
Well, all of us want to say welcome back to the interwebs, Big Mike and Terry.
Yes.
We're glad you could make it back with us this week.
Hey, one thing I forgot to say is Mama Carol. She's always in the chat. Her father, Robert Frederick Klink, passed away on Thursday, the 28th of March, at age 89. He's an Air Force veteran who served for 30 years. After his service, he went in to become a naval engineer working on government projects with the Sun Shipping Company, J.J. Henry, and Newport News Naval Shipping Company for 40 years. He served as a civilian, keeping our warriors equipped with the things that you need. So that's 70 years of faithful service he gave to his country. And, our love to you, Mama Carol, and prayers for your entire family for your loss. Okay, so who we got in the chat there, Jason?
Looking like we've got Glenda Grayson Fires says she's sliding in to say hello.
All right.
Stewie. And we got Dawn over there at Hat Creek Homestead.
All right. My favorite female Marine.
And who's here? Glenda Bendel.
Hey, there's Piggy Piddles, the Marine.
Lumpy Burke. Good to see you in here, brother.
There's Tracy at TNT Adventures.
We've got Ginger and maybe Joey lurking in the background over there, Not for Nothing Homestead. And Peter, Old Man King.
There you go. There's Glenda Bendel.
And there's TNT Adventures.
Yep.
And our brother Tim Mason made it in.
There's Angie at our cabin in the woods. Angie.
There's Webb's Webb.
She is our favorite VA nurse. Is Angie. There is Liam McGothican. I think I said that right.
Yes, I hadn't got that far, but that is how you say his name. So,
all right, Charlene Grady's in here.
Dana Mason, her and Tim are in. Hello.
Yes. Prayers for Tim.
We got another crayon eater in here with us, and Matthew Just Outdoors.
All right.
Carolyn Lulinski says, hello, Mike and Jason. My husband was in the Army and served in Vietnam.
Ooh. Tell him welcome home if he's. We had a thing that we started. I want to say we started it way too late for the Vietnam vets. It was the Welcome Home program that the Army did. I don't know if the Marines did that, but I think it started in 2014. Every year since that, they had a Welcome Home to the Vietnam vets, and that's where we got, you know, between veterans, you know, I do it a lot. If I see a veteran, I said, thank you for your service and welcome home, especially to our Vietnam veterans, because they were pretty much treated like dog poo poo when they came home.
That was a very unwelcome home for them. And my hat is off to every one of them out there. Like, and I've said it even when I was in, and you learn the history of Vietnam, you know, as part of your military classes. And I don't know how a lot of them made it through and just lived normal lives afterwards is amazing. It's just a testament of their true character. So,
but I want to tell you something. I said this in a video we did or a live we did on the other channel. Is I went to Thailand, and I went to northern Thailand up by the Cambodia border on trips, and we were in shorts and t-shirts and stuff, and I was dying. Okay, and it was in November, and I was dying in Thailand, so I could just imagine being in full, you know, fully rucked up and everything on patrol in the jungles of Vietnam, and I'm dying in shorts, flip flops, and a t-shirt. You know what I mean? So I couldn't even imagine. And you had to stay there for a 2-year tour at least. Are you kidding me?
Well, and I think that's why you've seen a lot of pictures and you watch videos of back then that they wore minimal, you know, which we think of today's generation where we have all this PPE, all this protective equipment, flax, Kevlars, you know, we're wearing SAPI plates everywhere. We have all this protection, you know, which is more weight we have to carry on us. But they didn't have, you know, I think they did have flak jackets, but there was no like SAPI plates, and they had the Kevlar in Vietnam.
Yeah.
But not to the level. And then looking at the vehicles, you know, I think that's a, you know, I know it's not a subject for tonight necessarily, but the upgrade in the vehicles. I remember Iraq in 2003, we were soft skin Humvees.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I didn't go back overseas in Afghanistan until 2008. But in then it was like, it was all up armored stuff. And you weren't allowed to leave a fob or a cob if it wasn't armored.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, well, we just did this whole deployment up to Baghdad and back. And
then you got to look at another thing, and we're getting totally off subject, but in the Gulf War, we were 80% conventional weapon systems and only 20% smart weapon systems. You can imagine what they were at in Vietnam.
Right.
You know? Now it's turned around, 80% smart and 20% conventional. So we've come a long way. But we still haven't figured a way to keep you nice and cool in a desert or a jungle. But we can send a spaceship to Mars. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple different options on the Humvees, and of course in the desert and all that sand that turns to baby powder. The air conditioning in those vehicles went to crap after the first road march.
Yeah.
But they did start. I know there was other vehicles that had them, but I know for me being in tanks, they started to retrofit a lot of the tanks with the cooling vests.
Oh, okay.
That ran the coolant through, so they would wear that underneath their flight suit. And I only used it moving around the base. We had to go get vehicles and do the retrofit, and so you know I would wear them every once in a while. And when it was 140 degrees, like I don't know what it was coming through here, but it kept you cool. Like I almost got cold a couple times, but that wasn't out in the field type environment. So.
Well, yeah, because you got to remember something. If it's 140 degrees in the desert and you wear something that gets your temperature down to like 85 or 90, it's still cold.
Yeah.
So, okay. Hey, so back on point. So We have a guest that we're going to bring up, and she's going to be part of the entire conversation. She is a caregiver for a vet. She is probably one of the strongest women I know that I've met. And we've met at the Mid-America, and she is just absolutely awesome. Husband, Sir Grace, absolutely awesome man. And I want to introduce you to her. And this is Glenda from Grace and Fire.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. So what we're going to talk about is the mission readiness first of the military. And the mission of the military is to be prepared to fight America's wars when diplomacy fails. Okay. That's our job anywhere on this planet. Okay. A lot of people would say that as long as civilians in Washington, D.C. control, the military and put parameters on the military, you can never really release the dogs of war on your enemy. And when you're a green suitor or a blue suitor or whatever, that holds you back in the fact, and it plays games on your mind in the mission sense that you're trained since basic training to engage the enemy. That's your job, number one. You're an infantryman. You train for that first, then you go learn another job. But your primary mission is to fight and destroy the enemy. That's your job. That's what they train you on. That's what they build into your head till you go, hey, that's just a way of life. And then they have a bunch of people that says, okay, but now that we've trained you to do all these great things for your country, we're going to throw a bunch of rules, some rules of engagements and stuff like that to handcuff yourself and your soldiers and potentially kill you because we need to make a decision that's best for your interest and the interest of the diplomacy that we need to start up again that we failed at. Okay. And that's the bottom line. Sorry if people don't like that, but living the life, that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
We were trained to shoot, move, and communicate, destroy the enemy, and then come back home. That's our job.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But there are games that are played. There's political BS that is always in the mix. And those things, when you're under fire and your squad leader, your platoon sergeant, whoever says, no, we can't engage. I haven't got permission to do it yet, but they're firing at us. I know. And so those are the mind games that start when you're trapped. It's kind of like if you trap a wild dog or coyote into a corner, okay, and watch that animal go absolutely berserk to get away from you, and they'll try to go through you. That's what it feels like when you're in a firing position, or you're on top of a roof, or you're doing something and you're not allowed to save your own life or the life of your battle buddies or the people to your left and your right, and you're strapped. That right there starts playing mind games on a lot of soldiers, Marines, anybody that's on the ground, in the air. I can't engage. They're right in front of me and they're blowing up our own people. Well, you got to wait for permission. Okay. Mission readiness is all about what I just said. Okay. But with that, it takes us away from our families. For like in the Army, we got to go to Fort Irwin. We got to go down to Fort Polk. We got to go on peacekeeping missions. And we're not good at the peacekeeping missions, guys. We were not built for peacekeeping. Okay. They said we were only going to be in Bosnia for maybe 1-2 years. I went there, the first people on the ground in Bosnia to cross the river from Croatia was the 1st Armored Division, and that's what I was in.
Mhm.
And we're still there. And that was in 95. I crossed the river on Christmas Day of 1995. So we had Christmas a week earlier and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you get tongue lashed. It's not Christmas yet, Dad. On and on and on. But those are the lives that our families have to, and the challenges they have just with the mission readiness part of all this. And that's not even deployment yet. It's the training. It's going to the field on your own installation. It's going to gunnery, going to all these things, and your family has to wait on you. So it's really, it is in the norm in the military to be dysfunctional family, meaning, you have 2 parents and only one's, and I'm going to tell you a story later that will sum up this whole thing in the end, but I don't know what you feel about that, Jason, but take it away, Mr. Marine Man.
Yeah. Everything you said, Mike, obviously is for sure, the accurate statement. And I think the biggest thing that we have to think about, and what we look at is we're the service member, right? We're the one that signed up. We raised our hand. We said, hey, and whether you were with your significant other, your spouse before you joined, so maybe they were part of that decision, or, like I was already in and then, met my first wife and, so it was something like you explain it to them, right? But I know like during pretty much my whole first marriage, right, there was nothing called, and I think the Army, they call them the same thing, the family readiness officer.
Right.
Families up until that point when they started this family readiness thing for the mission aspect, the families were a secondary thought in any unit and any command that you went to. They didn't care. They're like, look, you have problems with your wife, leave it at home. You have problems with your kids, leave it at home. Like, come to work, be at work. And when it comes down to the mission readiness, how do you expect a Marine, sailor, soldier, airman, any of them, to be able to function to the best of their capabilities and to the maximum capabilities when their brain isn't about that thing that the military gave them to fix or take care of in front of them, right? It's about, what are my wife and kids doing? Like, that is what's on their mind during any kind of training. You go to the field for 2 weeks. Guess what? You're missing your wife and kids, or even the single Marines. They're missing the opportunity that, hey, I call my mom or dad, or I call my brother, or, whoever that family member that's strong to them is. They don't have that availability. And, so I loved the fact when the military started going more towards a family readiness. And the thing about it is it makes the unit, the family readiness affects the deployability of that unit now.
Yeah.
If their family readiness is not meeting the needs and they don't have this whole list of boxes checked, right?
Right.
And I know Glenda can talk for it firsthand. I did, though, in one of my last active duty units, in between my second and third deployment, I was a remain behind. So I'm certified as a family readiness officer. And I had to do that because we normally had, I was civilian, but like our family readiness officer was, and we were in between, but it was always one of the Marine spouses.
Right.
They would go because they have a vested interest in that unit. Their spouse is there. Like they have, but there was a limbo time. And so like we had to assign others, and the amount of things that go through it, like we think about it, right? We're service members. We signed up, our families didn't, but then you just leave them at a moment's notice.
Right.
And, how do you explain to your 2-year-old or your 3-year-old, or your newborn, or, I got blessed enough that, I had 4 kids with my first wife. All 4 were born in the same hospital by the same doctor. I only missed 1 birth. I was there for the rest. But then, that son was a month and a half to almost 2 months old. And I know Marines that, that I deployed with, that their child was born right at the beginning of the deployment. So they come home, their child's already 6-8 months old. before they get to meet them for the first time.
Yeah.
And when you talk about mission readiness, like that's in the psyche of that, but then the spouse, that has to play mom and dad. And, now they might have already been doing most of that before, but there was still things that like I could do when I came home that I would take care of. But now guess what? That's not the option. They, and then they don't understand. In my experience of dealing with a lot of the spouses, they don't understand the terminology, and I'm sure Glenda can attest, how many times did Sir Grace come home and he starts talking to you and what is he using? All of these, like phrases and what do we call it?
Military jargon.
Acronyms. Acronyms.
That's what it is, right? We start talking to you in acronyms and we're like, why don't you understand this? Like I do this every day and I've talked to you about it and you're still like deer in the headlights. Like, and I think that's the step when they did the family readiness stuff and they start giving those classes to the spouses. And I think even probably to this day, it's a hard transition to get them spouses because they're like, well, no, my husband's the Marine. I don't need to go to that class. And it's like, but you do, because I need to be able to come home and talk to you about some of this stuff. And I need you to understand the basic, even if it's just rank structure. Like, hey, I did this with Staff Sergeant or First Sergeant or whoever. And they're like, what is that? You mean Jeff? Or it was like, no, like ranks mean things that they have. So I've hard to tell, right? But, family readiness has always been a big thing for me because I started my family in the Marine Corps early. I was single when I joined, but then I started my family right away. And that time of being away and then looking at my kids, and I've talked to them now as adults, and part of me is blessed that they were so young in the time that I was in the Marine Corps that they really don't remember most of it.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of kids that do. So, being able to push that out, but that's kind of my 2 cents for now.
Yeah. So Glenda, what is, I know Sir Grace was in the Air Force and we're not going to hold that against him, but
well, wait, I should share a little story about that one because I think you could hold it against him.
Okay.
So
mission readiness, you were there. I don't know what the deployment is for the Air Force or any kind of training, because I don't even know what his job was. But there's got to be a story behind every military branch.
There is. Yeah. So I'll kind of like give you a little, because Sir Grace is watching. So so the military was part of our family plan. Sir Grace and I have known each other. We're both Army brats. And so we have known each other. Our dads were stationed at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And so we were next door neighbors. So we have known each other for a long time. And when he was thinking about joining the military, he took the ASFAB. Well, back up. He asked me, he said, what do you think about the military? I'm like, yeah, whatever. It was like, okay. So he took the ASFAB for the Army and he failed. So yeah. There you go. So we laughed. This is our joke. And I know he's watching. So he went back and he studied again. And he took the ASFAB and got into the Air Force. And he was a surgical tech for 16 years in the Air Force.
Wait. A surgical tech and he failed the ASFAB.
Mm-hmm.
Dude.
Yeah.
He could have been a tanker.
Right.
So what happened? Like, how did you all of a sudden go, like, it's normally, hey, I failed the ASVAB and great, you're the cooker supply guy. Like, you're getting low man, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'm a surgical tech. Like,
I'm a surgical tech. Well, what I will say is he took time after that first ASVAB test and he studied. He was also a CNA. And so that had helped, I think, too. And Jake can, there he is. Oh, there he is. See, I said I would tell that story.
Going.
It's okay. I got you, honey. It's no big deal. Put him under the bus. No, honestly, the military was part of our experience, our plan. And as the acronym goes, he was part of the chair force. So keep in mind, this was pre 9/11. And, I, as a military spouse, I thought, and an Air Force one, that was like, oh, he won't deploy. He's in the chair force.
Yeah.
That was my mentality. Okay. I'm not going to lie. That was where I was naive. And I remember going to his first duty station and hearing acronyms like exercise. And I'm like, I'll tell you what, my first thought was all these people on the football field doing jumping jacks and sit-ups. We're doing an exercise. Okay. So, I mean, that's my military, humor. Yeah. But we had 3 kids before 9/11. So our kids actually remember everything. And we were in England when he did his first 2 deployments. And I know that my oldest is watching, so hi, sweetheart. And so all 3 of my kids were real little, and I can't say where he went. It's undisclosed for the first 2, but I didn't think I could do these deployments. I mean, I was in another country. I had 3 tinies, I had no connection this was before the family readiness aspect. We called it Airmen and Family Readiness Center is what we called it back in the day. I think now it's just family readiness. I think they've completely changed it. But back in the day, it was AFRC, which is Airmen and Family Readiness Center. So it was before all this. And I flew my sister in for the first deployment. And I'll tell you, she really helped me get through it. She didn't know what the military was like. She just knew I was a mom with 3 littles. And the day that I took him to the airport to send him off, I was a hot mess. And I didn't get out of bed for a week. I was on my face crying. And thank God for a good sister, because she came in and she literally took that blanket straight off my face. And she said, all right, let's get a map, because there was no GPS. Let's get a map. Let's get the gas tickets. Let's pack lunches. Let's go on some adventures. And that is who got me through that piece.
Yeah.
And then to see the kids, wanting their dad back, I couldn't replace that as a mom. I'm mom, not dad. Dad's cool. Mom's not, I try, but I'm not as cool as dad.
Right.
But it was hard because if anything would go wrong, it did. During the third, he deployed 4 times. So during the third one, we were back in the United States and I had a little bit more experience. And I remember my oldest going to the youth center, and she had her little military ID card. And I asked her, I said, where's your ID card? And she said, oh, I left it in my pants. Well, I had already washed her clothes, put it in the dryer. Well, that ID card went into the dryer, like way down in. And guess who had to learn how to take a dryer apart?
Yeah.
I can clean dryers now. I know how to do it. But I had to do things like that. The car breaks down. I had to constantly deal with that. And I was raising these kids who are also very active into the Scouts. I had a Girl Scout and 2 Boy Scouts. I'm a mom of 2 Eagles now.
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah. Right. So, I was always very active with that, but it was very difficult. And then after it was after the 3rd deployment, I became a key spouse. And for those who don't know, I volunteered for the 1st sergeant and the commander, and I was in charge of taking care of the military families to make sure that, if they were having problems with getting their lawn mowed, we would get a team together to get their lawn mowed. We would check in with the families the parents to make sure that they were getting the calls if they were single airmen, that their parents were hearing. And that really helped me get through some of those deployments. But the Airmen and Family Readiness Center was key on those second 2, because I kept my kids busy. There was a nonprofit that worked with the and they would donate money so we could go watch a baseball game, or we would go play putt-putt. And that's how I kept them going. But was that perfect? Oh, no.
No.
You know, it was
I
hard.
don't do it that way.
It
don't work that way.
it don't. But the other part that was very hard on all 4 of those deployments was reintegration. And having to, as you know, I was playing mom and dad, and now he's coming back in, and there's that balance. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, I can't let you do this. I've been doing this for so long, you know. Learning to let him co-parent again. I'll admit, I was awful. I had a hard time with that. I'm like, you've been gone for 6 months more. No, you're messing my groove up.
So one of the things that I will tell you on a redeployment, we have to take classes during the redeployment phase in the Army. And that is your senior mission commander. It could be your division commander. It could be whoever. Basically, with a legal review attached to it, tells you if you go back and there's any incidences and violence and all that, I'm going to crucify you, period. Okay. And then you have the chaplain. It could have been a captain at the company or at the battalion level or a colonel or whatever. And they come in there, and then at the time I deployed during Desert Storm, they would come in there and talk to us about, and this is a chaplain, he's Catholic and he's never been married. And he's going and talking to us about marital advice. I'm Catholic, okay? And I'm sitting there thinking, isn't there somebody better to talk about marital advice than a Catholic priest? And talking about, you know, going back home. And then later on, it hit me because he was a psychologist. That was his real calling in life. And then he came into the priesthood. And so it was, when you go back, just remember you are not in charge. And because from past experiences, the husband comes back, he's still hyped up. He just went through whatever he went through, and he comes back and he still has an aggressive attitude. And I can only talk about the Army. You still have that aggressive attitude, and that's in life in general, because you have to understand, and they don't teach the spouses of this. If you're a young lady and you are in love with somebody that's getting ready to go into the military, or they're in the military and they want to marry you to bring you into this nightmare, okay, run. Run quickly. Because, you know, after a while, and like I said at the beginning, very few career Army guys have the same wife as when they started. Because of the pressure. Okay. You take a young lady from corn country, and she's never been outside Lincoln County, and she goes, oh yeah, our first duty station is Europe. And she goes, oh man, I've always, you know, studied Europe, and then all of a sudden they're over there, and as soon as they get over there, said, hey, your unit's deploying. She's stuck in Europe all by herself, and all she knows is corn country talk, you know. And she's sitting in the middle of Germany. Now it's time, and she's pregnant, because it goes quickly after you're pregnant, you know, when you get married and stuff, because they haven't found a cure for that yet. And so they come over to Europe, and now she's stuck. She don't know nobody. He barely in process, and he's going to join his unit that's already deployed. So in that instance, we've seen a lot of, I'm going back to the world as we know it, and I'm going back to mommy and daddy. And every time they deploy, they get into that mentality. It's fright and then flight, and then they take off, and they're never there when they come back and stuff like that. So it's hard in both cases. But what I will tell you is, when you're talking about you being left behind with 3 little ones and the stress on your brain that, you always got that positive, he'll come back and everything will be okay and all this kind of stuff. But it's still in the back of your mind. And I've talked to a lot of people, and they said, but what if?
Yeah.
The what if, or thinking too deep into something, will drive a person insane, no matter what the subject is. But in this case, this is real life.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm overseas, and this is the point I'm trying to make. All right, we get letters from home. Okay, our kids are part of the Child and Youth Services Center,
Mm-hmm.
And they got programs on post, and you got your people that are back in the rear with the gear, supposed to be taking care of the families. Then you got the family support group or family readiness group representatives and stuff like that. They're supposed to be taking all care of everything, and to keep them informed from like the commander's wife down, so you get everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're doing all that stuff, or that's what's supposed to be going on. I'm over in Iraq, and this is a true story. Hey, the kids didn't get to sign up for soccer because there wasn't enough people enrolled, and MWR and CYS said, yeah, we're just going to cancel it. And all the kids were let down. And then, they had to buy their own stuff, even though we paid all this money for uniforms during basketball season. And this is going wrong. The units never contacted me. I've left several messages. The cars broke down. I don't know how to get it somewhere, and nobody at the unit will pick up the dang phone and do nothing. And all this letter, I'm reading this letter, it's 3 pages long of everything that's going wrong back in the rear. And then all of a sudden at the end, I see a sentence says, but we love you and we hope you come back soon. That was a letter I got.
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking, ain't nobody taking care of my family. My kids are the most important thing in my life. Okay. And nobody's taking care of them back in the rear. Okay. And then you start overthinking it. And then you start the plotting of the assassination of your family support group leader and the NCOIC in the rear. And all this stuff is going through your brains, and how good you're going to feel after you get back and you've beaten the snot out of half a dozen people. And then, hey, Sergeant, your group's up. You got to go on patrol. And you're still thinking about this. And then you kill 3 or 4 people because your brain is not in the game.
Mm-mm.
If your brain's not in the game, you're going to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And people don't understand that unless you're put in that situation. That's what causes PTSD, the overthinking, new people getting married, and now they're on a deployment and they've never been apart from each other, and everything is going to heck in a handbasket, and all this loneliness and all this kind of stuff is going on, and people's brains are not in the game. And that's when you step on a bouncing Betty. You're not looking for the roadside, okay, IEDs and all this kind of stuff that you're supposed to, because you're thinking, okay. That puts stress on the service member. That's why we have medical flights going back to Landstuhl.
Yeah.
That's why we have a huge medical service and prosthetic hospitals that the military has, because of things like that. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. Because as I said before the show, Desert Storm was the biggest or the highest number of divorce rate the military had ever seen.
Right.
Had ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I tell people nowadays, could you imagine somebody out of college marrying a soldier that is college woke, and you have to go through all this stuff? Okay. They're not going to stick around long, but kudos to the wives that take charge in the rear with the gear and the family and stuff like that. Kudos to them, the ones that make it through that boot camp. Okay. And that is a boot camp for a young mother. Mm-hmm. And I applaud every one of those. But I get it. It ain't for everybody. Okay. And especially the children. Okay. Especially the children, what they go through. Like you were saying, Jason, some guy's coming back. He's coming back from deployment and his kid's like 2 months old and he's never even touched his baby. Right. Because they don't let you go back. Okay. What are you going to do anyway? You're going to sit there and watch? I mean, you can't birth your baby. Right. I mean, that's what I've heard from senior command. Right. You can't birth your baby.
Well, all right. I think the aggravating part in that specific situation, because we knew, that was in 2003. So that was during the initial invasion into Baghdad, going up to, and so we knew, I knew when I left, my wife obviously was already pregnant and that she was gonna, we didn't have a number of how long we were going to deploy. They're like, hey, you're going, you'll come back when we send you back. So there was a reality and understanding that, hey, I'm going to be that guy that I've heard about that, hey, he wasn't there. He was deployed. The military made them do something to where they couldn't be there for the birth of their child. And I mean, it was devastating to me because I was there for the first two. And I knew what it meant to me as a father, you know, that just being there. Yeah, you're not doing anything. You're watching, right? You're told that, hey, shut up and color, put your hands in your pocket. Mm-hmm. I'm all about hey, I want to watch this whole element. And the doctor's like, dude, can I do my job? Back up. But then you have the struggle because back then, communication technology was not up to par either. Yeah. So, if you remember back then to where you talked and then there was a 30-second delay. Yeah. So you said it, they didn't hear it for 30 seconds. And then you're so until you could figure out a rhythm. Yeah. And it's a 10-minute phone call.
What do they call MSE phones? And then when I was in, it was a Mars phone and you had to say over each time when you were done talking.
Yeah, they had what they call it, the morale line, I think is what they call it.
It was morale line is what I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so it's that part of it made it frustrating because I couldn't even call home. I knew the rough date she was supposed to give birth. And I was like, I haven't gotten any word. They said, hey, Red Cross, right? That's the ultimate answer for emergencies when you're in those situations. Yeah. But then I didn't even get a Red Cross message. And I happened to call back, and of course she wasn't answering because, hey, she's at the hospital giving birth to my child. And so I got a hold of a family member that said, hey, yeah, your son is born. And I'm like, okay, great. So where's and it almost turned into an anger because now I'm supposed to get an emergency phone call through the, Iridium phone, not the morale line that I'm over here trying to dial the same number 100 times to get a connection. Right. And, the command's like, well, we didn't get a message, so we're not letting you use the phone. And, and there was another guy in my unit that actually our kids were born the same day. And he immediately got a Red Cross message and got to call and talk to his wife. And, and then they sent a picture through the Red Cross to the company commander's email or whatever, so that you could at least see a picture. I didn't even get that. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? So your thought process, I could have cared less what was going on in Iraq at that point, or why I was there, what the purpose was, what my brother to the left and the right of me was doing. No, my kid was born. The world stops. What is going on? And, in the end, I did finally, obviously got a hold of my wife, still didn't get any pictures of him. And I'm like, what is going on? She's like, look, I just don't need you to have extra worry. I said, that's already out the window. The extra worry started when I didn't get it. But he was born with a birth defect. Yeah. And we didn't expect it. Hasn't affected his whole life. It was a cleft lip and palate. They're very common, especially on her side of the family. And, but we weren't expecting it, everything beforehand. So she's like, but you're in a war. I can't give you, like, you want me to send a picture of your deformed kid. And I'm like, yeah, it's my kid. Like, I don't care how he came out. Like, let him have 15 fingers. You know, we're at Camp Lejeune. He's supposed to, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, it just,
Yeah.
I want to know. And yes, everyone knows. Camp
Yes.
Lejeune.
I get some of that money.
Mhm. That's what I say.
So, and I want to go back to, it's not funny, but there's so much truth to where you talked about like the divorce rate, right?
Yeah.
Is, you know, I was one of those that I made staff sergeant and I was still married to my first wife. Like I was right at my 8-year mark in the Marine Corps and I was still married. And I'm like, I made staff sergeant because the ongoing standard that everyone told you, right, was, hey, you're not going to make staff NCO. You can't get E6 or above without a divorce. It's not going to happen. You'll never. Like,
yeah, I've heard the same thing.
It's mandatory. And I'm like, you guys are full of crap. But, you know, and obviously that marriage didn't happen. And I got divorced. And then I still didn't get promoted. And then I turned around and I was like, wait a minute. Maybe I'm just behind. I got staff sergeant before I got divorced. So I got married and I stayed married for a while. And then I got divorced again. And I still didn't get promoted. So I kind of like buffed that myth of, hey, that doesn't work. But there's a lot of truth because the spouses, you know, and I say it a lot because it's so true. They didn't sign on to it. They agreed to marry you as a man, as that military member. They didn't ask for all this other crap. And this, oh, guess what? It's midnight and my phone rang and I answered it. And guess what? 10 minutes later, I'm out the door. I've got to go.
Right.
And I don't have time to tell you where am I going? How long am I going to be gone? It's just, hey, they called. I got to go. Like,
right.
And I think that's, I seen it with both of my first two wives that I had while I was in, was the amount of stress because the confusion and the lostness.
Yeah.
You know, and then as I got promoted, and like I said, I went through the family readiness training. So now I'm dealing with the Marines and a lot of their spouses. Like it kind of transitioned to, yes, the unit readiness made a point, but it was more important that I knew about that Marine, his wife, his kids, when their birthdays were, when their anniversaries were. And you know, going through that transition, that was a lot on my brain.
Yeah.
And everybody that was in during that era of the transition from no family readiness at all to, hey, we're jumping in. And they didn't just like, let's trickle a little bit. They went, hey, here's the deep end. You're going. And we're doing it now.
Right.
And, you know, and that was the major complaint. Like I had wives calling me, and I mean, as annoying as it was, but I knew I needed to, you know, talk to them because they had no answers. They're like, well, how do I do this? And I think the best situation I was put in was living on military housing, which if you get beyond the drama of it, right? Like military housing has a whole stigma, right? Living soap opera. Here's Days of Our Lives and Oprah in one block. Like, let's have fun. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And then the next block is nothing but Jerry Springer. So, but I got in a good neighborhood. And, you know, and what reminded me, you know, was Glenda talking about, like, she got there and, hey, guess what? That's great. You know, I'm pregnant. I got other kids going on and sweet. High five. We made it to the country. You unpack everything. I've got to go do work stuff. And so that block I was in, every one of those kids Saturday morning, obviously when I wasn't on deployment, right? Every one of those kids, I got up in the morning, made my coffee, opened my front door. They knew if the main door was open, of course, the screen door was shut, they just walk in. And I had a whole island and breakfast was laid out. And I was getting calls from moms. Hey, have you seen my kid? Yeah, he's right here. He's shoving his face full of pancakes. Like, and what had happened was we were all of the husbands were different units, different MOSs, different units. So none of us really deployed at the same time. You know, there might be one or two, maybe a third. I think at one time the most was like 3 of us deployed at the same time. But that left the other dads that were allowed to be deployment dads to help, you know, and I know like my direct neighbor, next door neighbor, she had just gave birth to, you know, their youngest. And he was like a colic baby. And she had I mean, she would come over, it would be 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night in tears. Like, I would hear my front door open as I'm laying in bed, and I'm like, who the heck's just walking in my house?
Yeah.
And then I hear the baby crying, and she's crying louder than the baby. And she's just like, help me. I can't, she's got 2 more and they're asleep, but the baby, and I would grab him. All right, boom. And he's out. Like, I'd get him to sleep, and there was nights I'm like, hey, you lay in my bed. I'm going to go hang with him on the couch for a while. We're going to, and that was the only way. So we had to do this like rotational deployment dad deal. Because we knew we had spouses, right? But we knew that it's not a one-man job, even though they're required to do it. And it's like, they, and in this case, right, is they agreed to be a mom, they agreed to be a wife, but they didn't agree to support the entire thing. And then, most of the time it was like, hey, okay, they already took care of the bills. But if they didn't, if the husband was doing that, now all of a sudden they've got to figure out, where do the bills go? How did this, especially the really young, the, brand new 19, 20-year-olds that they're like, everyone told us not to get married and we did it. And we're going. And then a week later he's deployed and she's like, whoa, wait a minute. What happened? We're supposed to be, Top Gun, being on the beach, playing volleyball. Like, how the heck is he gone? And I'm here changing diapers and taking these kids to 17 sports. Like, that's not what they showed on the Hollywood TV.
Yeah.
No.
So Glenda, what is, I guess the part that hurt me the most, that got to me, was my kids. Thinking of what are they doing, on and on and on, and reading the letters and stuff like that. Because when I got back, all my kids could ever tell me was, oh, everything was fine, Dad. Everything was fine, Dad. Okay. They didn't tell you about Mom blowing her lid half the times and all this other stuff. But as a mom with young ones I don't know how old your kids were to experience the full effect of a deployment on your husband, on Sir Grace. But how did that work in your family?
So the first deployment was 6, 5, and 3. Yeah. Age-wise.
Very impressionable.
Yeah, very young. It's interesting because so many topics, with doing the deployments, it was so difficult. And, as a mom, I had to be the strong one, and I had to put poker faces on a lot. But I'm telling you, when you're picking up the pieces at the end of the day, it is one of the hardest jobs to do, is to be mom and dad. And I always said I was geographically widowed.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, and it was really hard. And when I say anything and everything that could go wrong during deployments, it went wrong. So, I remember on the second deployment, all 3 of my kids got stitches during that deployment. And it just was like, by the time I got to the third one, I went, do I qualify for frequent flyer miles? Yeah. I mean, like, I'm here. And I thought for sure, they were going to think it was me, but no, your kids are doing things that you can't have eyes on everything. You know what I mean? It's really hard to go through that. And
so on your first deployment, everything was like hyped up tenfold.
Oh yeah.
By the time the last deployment, you'd say the kid just rub some dirt in.
No, I tell spouse, I did when I was a key spouse, I told key spouses, new spouses that were doing the deployments, give yourself 24 hours to cry.
Yeah.
It's okay. And I'm telling you, so Sir Grace, because of the Air Force, he did onesie twosie. I'd take him to the airport. And I remember putting on the darkest sunglasses I had, putting on the most hateful music I could find, because I don't want to listen to love songs. I don't want to listen to, oh, life is good. Oh, and I'm coming back. And then I have to go through that gate and show my ID card to that security forces guy. And I'm like, big sunglasses, hateful music. Here's my ID card. Now let me go home, because I lived on military base. So, give yourself 24 hours, but it is so hard, and not having that family readiness component in the first 2 deployments, even harder, because I did reach out for help to his team or his, coworkers for help. Never got it. They just looked at me as the whiner and the complainer because I'm a dependopotamus. I'm like, wait a second, I need help. Yeah. Oh yeah. I went there. He was in the chair force. I was a dependopotamus.
Nice.
I haven't heard that in
welcome.
years.
And you're welcome. But no, I was just a struggling mother. And, the kids just, and it's to witness what our kids, because I didn't have babies while he was deployed. We had our children before 9/11. They were all born. And so we were en route to England when 9/11 happened. We were in New York State. We got caught up going to England. So just to kind of give you an idea where our kids were at in life, but to watch the kids go through that and crying and wanting their dad so bad, and all you could do is just sit and love on them and try to reassure them that dad's coming home while you're dealing with your own emotions. Poker face, you're dealing with your own, and you're trying to be upbeat. And one of the things, and we still have them, but I had the kids write letters to their dad, even if it's just coloring, write them, and that helped them. And then the other thing we did was we did the M&M jar, and we also did the, I've only got one arm because I had surgery. So we did, so trying to lift my arm. Okay. So we did the loops, where you loop it and then the kids could peel, like, this is when dad's coming home. Well, I started with the M&M jar, and I figured out that they were adding M&Ms to the jar, or taking away, trying to get dad home because they could eat them home.
Yeah.
No, we do the chain so I can count, but, I really just did the best I could, but I know that my kids struggled. And the other thing is that, yes, you think of the worst, but you never think that they could come home injured. Never. Yeah. You think, oh, the ultimate. No, you don't think about the injury, and then having to integrate with that as well. And not only is the divorce rate hard on deployments, now take it into the caregiver aspect of it. And it is a statistic, according to the 2014 RAND study, that less than 1/3 of marriages survive that. Right. That's after all the deployment divorces. Yeah. Now let's add in the other.
Yeah.
And so to say that the military is hard is an understatement. It is very hard on the core of the family. Right. And, there are things that, one of my kids, we were having a conversation yesterday about military related things, and, to hear that perspective now as an adult, this one isn't, all 3 of them are adults. I'm a grandmother, but, it just really, we did the best we could with the resources we had.
Right.
And the other thing you talked about hearing, Jason, you didn't get to see your baby be born. And I don't know if you remember, but those morale calls would happen, and Sir Grace called me. And there was one time that I had a panic attack completely right on the phone. And I was trying not to disclose that I was having a panic attack because he's in war. And I can hear this. I can hear war going off through the phone. You can hear it, and it's mortifying. And I literally fell to the floor. Yep. And Sir Grace had to hang up. Well, not hang. I don't know if Sir Grace, did you hang up or did you stay on? But anyhow, he called the first sergeant, and the first sergeant met me at the hospital because we had to get my youngest had to call an ambulance. They thought I was having a massive heart attack. I cannot imagine Sir Grace hearing this over the phone while he's deployed. His wife has now hit the floor. We didn't know. I didn't know it was a panic attack until later because I was just trying to be cool and I hear this, and I went to the floor. That's all he heard, and I just, from that perspective, I could not imagine being in war and hearing your wife go down. It's still, it bothers me that he had to hear that. Yeah. But and the other thing is that, I always say Skype is a double-edged sword, because
Yeah.
that's hard as well, having those conversations. Hey, babe, how are you? What's going on? Are you staying active? Are you going to the gym? What are you doing, sweetheart? What do you want me to send you? And you hear everything in the background. And then you got to hang up and look at your kids and go, Dad's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That it is one of the hardest things to do. But I tell spouses all the time, get involved with your family support system. Find out what is going on. See, what are the services available, and keep your kids active as best as you can. I mean, I think that's why I have 2 Eagle Scouts, and I was a Girl Scout, was crazy Girl Scout mama.
Yeah.
But, I kept my kids active. But if you don't, no, it's hard.
And I think that was the hardest. I think the transition was getting the wives, the spouses, to jump on board, because we were trying to explain to them, and I love that you made that comment, was if you don't like the fact that you're not getting information, then get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, I had a lot of conversations with my first wife, because she was so, like, anti, other than the fact that she loved that paycheck coming twice a month, like, she was anti everything, like it provided food, it provided shelter, it did what it needed to do as a husbandly duty, right, for my job. But then when I would ask her, like, well, you need to go, go do this family readiness stuff, go to this class, go to this course, like, well, she's one of those, I know everything. I know, well, they don't got to tell me nothing. Like, my husband's a Marine. What? And I'm like, but you don't. Like, and
No.
And as I progressed, and even in, I forced, like, my second wife, I didn't even give her a choice. The neighbor lady was the family readiness officer for her unit, her husband's unit. And so, we tricked her, and I didn't tell her what she was. She was going to lunch with Mandy, and she was going to have fun, but they were going to a family readiness meeting. And, because I'm like, you have to get involved. The more the better it doesn't make the situation better. You're not going to be any less lonely. You're not going to miss your husband. Your kids aren't going to miss him any less. But if you can know, and if you don't like the answers that you're not getting, then get involved yourself. There's this program now. And if you get involved and you participate in it, you're going to help. Like, those things that you're mad about, and you're like, I don't want to talk to those ladies. Like, they're a bunch of cackling hens, and I don't want to deal with it. And the unit doesn't tell me nothing. Well, guess what? You can go be part of it and then fix that problem.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think there's a level of overwhelmness on the spouse side and for the family because of those. Well, how am I supposed to do that? I got, a Girl Scout meeting. I got Boy Scout meetings, and now I got sports. And then I've got, let's go do, parent teacher conferences. And, now they got a school play. And, it's the kid's birthday. So now I need to send all these baked goods in for their birthday or Valentine, and then, major holidays, deployed during Christmas. How do you, Mike, you were talking about that where, hey, it was Christmas Day, we crossed the LD, and it was just one of those that they have to wrap all that up. But I think that if they get in that network, and the perfect example I seen was that neighborhood I lived in, was we knew as a group, we hung out on the weekends, we had a great time. Like, that was my best experience ever on military housing. Because we were just both sides of the street for each block was a big family. And when somebody needed something, one of us could step up to do that and help. And that gave a local support, and it forced some of the wives to have to be more involved. Because I think for them, and what I witnessed was, it was that much needed distraction that they weren't willing to give themselves, because they're like, no, I've got this. It's and they the spouses put so much stress on themselves because they have to, right? I'm poker faced. I've got my big fancy, and that makes a lot more sense why you've seen all the military wives with big fancy glasses.
Yeah. Now you know the rest of the story. There's maybe one.
Yeah, we're getting to hear Paul Harvey's not the only one, folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's seeing that, getting them more involved. And I wish my kids would have remembered more of the better things, but they were all so young. By the time I got divorced, my oldest was 8, And so the youngest was like 4, 3 or 4. And they didn't stay in the local area long enough. So deployments didn't necessarily affect them too much because now they had just moved 1,000 miles away. And, I was only seeing them a minimum time anyway. So I might as well been, deployed the whole time. It really wasn't a major transition for them. But I seen it with my younger Marines, my friends, with their kids and how they reacted, and the other spouses that we would have to interact with. Wildness for sure.
Yeah, it is a really interesting perspective. I mean, the family dynamic that gets left behind, and then to see like the kids grow with this, and because mine went through all the deployments, and it was so difficult. The stories that I've heard now through adult ear, or they're adults, so I'm hearing more about how they felt about those deployments. It is very eye-opening, and they realized that I had to do a poker face, that I was just protecting them from a lot of things, but they really miss their dad, and rightfully so. I mean, dad is the cool dad. I'm just saying, Sir Grace is a lot of fun. He is the cool one. But, the other thing that I was thinking when I first became an Air Force wife, kind of to your point, Jason, I had a commander pull me into the office, and it's my husband's commander, and he sat me down. And I guess there had been a problem in Japan before I had gotten there with a lot of the spouses being really catty, and they were pulling their husband's rank and running around and wearing it, which I just don't get into that. I never cared about rank. But this is what he told me. He said, if you do the spouses club, of course, we weren't in active war like 9/11 in comparison to that. But he said, I want to tell you, he said, you outrank your husband. And I looked at him and I thought, okay, what has rank got to do with anything? Why are you telling me this? Like, this is like the weirdest thing to me. He goes, no, you do. He said, you work, you pay taxes. He works for the government that works for you. He wanted to get that dispel of the military wife. It was my welcome to the Air Force, Yeah. And so when I went to my first spouses meeting at the NCO club, which is for the enlisted side, for those who don't know, it was very catty, and they were pulling their husband's rank. And I hate it. I didn't want to be anything to do with those spouses club. I didn't want to be connected. I want nothing. And then, let's fast forward. We went through 9/11. We went through the Iraq War kickoff. We were in England for both of we were in the States for 9/11, but we were on the heels on our way over. But we were in England for the Iraq. And then we were in England for the London attacks. When I came back to the United States, I made a decision that I was going to get more involved, which is why I became a key spouse later. And it's one of the best things, because you really do get to understand what the mission readiness is all about. What are they up to? You get to know the unit a little bit better. You get to know your families a little bit better as to who's left behind, so you don't feel alone, right? And, I was more tapped into what the Air Force, what was going on with the Air Force at that time. I understood as a key spouse what would happen if Sir Grace had made the ultimate sacrifice. What are the procedures? Like that was like, I could tell you dollar amount that would be put in the bank account, where you're going to go to Dover. I knew. I mean, it was like bam, 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 bam. Nothing on wounded warriors, no training. It's a fault of the key spouse program. And I've heard it's still a fault, but, I was more connected, and that helped me to be able to get through a little bit stronger and be more, connected, kept the kids connected. And I say this because, while it sounds like it was a great thing, we were going to baseball games, we were playing putt-putt, we were doing this. That was to distract those kids because they wanted their dad first and foremost. I had to do something to keep them busy. And man, I am so grateful that was a part of our experience in the end. It wasn't in the first 2 deployments, but I'm telling you, get connected. you're making a mistake. I mean, every military spouse, I don't care if you're a guy or a girl, because there are a lot of guys that don't go unrecognized that are left behind.
Yeah.
Guys get involved, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the fun memories that my kids have that they talk about is that on Tuesday nights, we got to go eat at the chow hall because the family support center would open up, and they thought it was cool because they got to see all these guys in uniform, and they're like, is that dad? Is that dad? You know, looking at all the guys in uniform. That's one of their
I will tell you that you go on YouTube and you see these military members reuniting with their children. I cannot watch those. I cry like a 2-year-old.
Yes.
When I see those, as soon as I go like this, I just start flipping away from it.
Yeah.
Because the first time I deployed and I came back, my oldest son, Mike, we were in formation. The band was playing and Mike jumped out of the bleachers and he ran through, fell into like 3 or 4 different people. And then he came straight to me and wrapped his arms around my leg. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking up there in my first sergeant. He's like turning around, he's going, you know, I said, sorry, Top, can't help it. And then I went over there after it was all over the ceremony, and my son next to me, and he was sitting there crying, you know, and he had that look in his eye, just he was so mad, and he'd been crying and everything. And I went over there and I got on one knee and I just went like this and I started hugging him, and he started hitting me and told me how mad he was at me.
Oh.
And see, I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I can't watch these.
Yeah.
Because I know how much that hurts those kids.
It's
I mean, there's kids that when they lose a father or a mother, they're never going to be the same. And how they died is never really explained 100%. I will tell you that I've been on the end where my letters to families had to go through JAG or correctness or too much truth to protect the military side till the entire 15-6 investigations are done. And then again, you're still not hearing the whole truth. I've been on that side. I've been deployed first sergeant, and it never ends. Coming from the rear, coming from your soldiers. I've got to get back. My wife just told me this and that and yada, yada, yada. Or my neighbor called and my wife's got to deploy. What would they call those deployments? Spouses moved into my house, meaning the soldiers would deploy and somebody in the rear would be living in their house.
Oh my.
I mean, you hear the stories. I was in Fulda, Germany. There's a case that went on where a guy deployed, and the guy in the rear was one of his friends, and he didn't deploy with us for some reason. And the wife called him like within the first few weeks and says, "Hey, I'm pregnant." And he was all happy, and he was part of our squadron. And then we came back, and his child was born, but his child was he's Caucasian, and his child was African American, and he was our armor, and he called the barracks and said someone answered the phone on the German telephone that's outside the mess hall. Said, "Hey, I need to talk to this guy." And this is all in the court records. The guy's doing life in prison and all that stuff. And he came out there, and the guy, and the chow hall's full, and it's lit up out there where the phones are. And He decapitated the guy. He took the head, put it in a German shopping bag, and went back to the hospital and threw it on her lap while she was in the hospital right after she gave birth. So he's doing life in prison, but he went crazy.
Yeah.
I've seen stuff like that. I've seen wives leave their husbands within the first week of a deployment. It's too much stress. I've seen wives commit suicide because we during Desert Storm, we went down to gunnery. We have gunnery at Grafenwehr, Germany for 45 days. And then you move from Grafenwehr down to Hohensfeld for force on force training for another 45 days. And we were washing everything down on the racks and all that stuff. And it was August of 90. Okay. And we were getting everything cleaned up, going to get ready to put it on the railhead and everything like that. And we got the call, we're deploying to Southwest Asia. So we didn't even, they put the phones off limits. We couldn't call our spouses. They're going to let the family readiness group contact everybody. And we loaded up in C5 Galaxy C-17s right there on that airstrip. And we were heading to KKMC in Saudi Arabia. And so, I get it. I had the same wife. I came in 79, got married in 82, and divorced, separated in 2000. So I only had one wife during the entire military and stuff like that. But saying that and being married for 22 years, I only lived with my family for 9 out of all those years because of the jobs and stuff like that. And I put career over everything else. And, if you don't give up, you can't move up. Okay. As soon as they start detecting, oh, he's too much of a family man, the mission's got to come first. The military's got to be first. And I fell into that because I wanted to move up the chain and stuff like that. So it is, being in the military is a hard job. Number one, it is changing your entire way of life, because being in the military is not normal human behavior. Okay. And I'll tell you that right now.
I'm finding that out now. Like, I thought it was normal when we were in, but then you get out and everyone's like, you're not normal. What do you mean?
In the Army, we have a thing called Warrior Adventure Quest. And all these PhDs got together and they said, hey, what turns a soldier on is they show it as a bell curve. And the height of your deployment is up here on the top of the bell curve, because you're doing mission readiness, then you got combat, and then you got redeployment coming down. This is boring. Okay? Because you're doing too much work over here to get ready for this up here. But it is the adrenaline rush of going out the gate on a mission in a convoy on foot patrol that you're just like going, you leave the compound, safety's off on both sides. And you don't know, you're so jumpy and, is that bag over there? Is that a bomb? Is that those rocks over there? Is that, is this and that? Am I going to get shot on this deployment? Or when I'm in a Humvee and I'm on the 50 cal up here, am I crunched down the whole way, getting the crap beat out of me because, there's nothing smooth over there, and you just don't want to get shot. And that adrenaline rush is nothing you can duplicate. Okay.
Nope.
And you're dreading for your squad. It's your turn. But then when you're on there, you are so hyped up, you can feel your heartbeat in your eyeballs. And then the crazy ones, they just go, hey, we're out here. Okay, let's go. And they're just rocking their weapon while they're walking. And the other guys are just like cats on a hot tin roof. They're just scratching, trying to stay alive. So the Army came up with a thing called Warrior Adventure Quest. And the only thing that they could come up close to the adrenaline that soldiers look for. Because when a soldier comes back to the world, the civilian side, okay, they get in trouble a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They've got all this money to burn that they've been saving up because there ain't crap to spend your money on over there. Mm-hmm. So you got this money in the bank, and they go out and they buy the cars, and they buy the motorcycles, and they do this, and they do things that put themselves at risk. So we came up with this thing, and it is a high adrenaline adventure program that you might say, okay, the companies go, okay, these are all the things you can choose from. How do you want to do this by platoon? And one platoon say, hey, we want to go bungee jumping over that bridge over at the Royal Gorge in Colorado, because I ran that program over there. So doing the bungee jump off the into the Royal Gorge and stuff like that. Or you want to go skiing or snowboarding or ice climbing or doing whatever, these things that get them pumped up. Because when you get in trouble, they don't care that you came back from combat. You are not fitting into normal society. Okay. And that's where our soldiers, all our military got in trouble, because when you join the military out of high school, okay, right before you went in there and they said bend over and grab your ankles, before that point you were normal. You were a normal human being. And then when they checked your prostate, it's ended. A whole new world started for you. Then you went to boot camp and they drove you insane because nobody's yelled at you like this before. And nobody's talked to you like this before. And what? I'm being accounted for? I got to account for my actions? And then the training starts and you go to your duty stations. Then you go on to deployment. You're never normal again. And you will never be normal the rest of your life, because you're going to be like Jason and I, okay, with these little back doors back here that open every once in a while. And we remember stuff when we're talking on YouTube. So you're never normal again. Just like a spouse, once you've gone through the hell of sending your soldier, Marine, airman, seaman, whatever they are, off to war, and you're set there in a job, being a parent's hard enough. Yeah. Being the spouse of a deployed, being a mother of a son going into combat, okay, yep, he's coming back. And then a green car pulls up in front of your house. And then the reality sets in when they notify you that your husband's in Landstuhl, Germany, he's in Bethesda, he's in wherever, and we're trying to put his ass back together, okay?
Or you're not allowed to go over to see them. You're not as a spouse, you have to stay put there in Landstuhl.
That, my friends, is true PTSD. I don't care what part of the military you're in, it's going to affect you and it's going to stay with you the rest of your life. Okay. Those are parents that say, there's no way you're marrying a soldier. I married this guy over here, this lump. Okay. I'm not going to put you through that. And let me tell you why. Tell your kids the hard truth. It's hard being a military member's spouse. Okay. Because we come back. Trust me, you may not want to admit it, but there's a violent side to you. Okay. And soldiers are so proud. Marines are so proud. Everybody's so proud because you think that if I go and ask for help, that's the end of my career. Okay. And I don't care how much the military tells you, nope, you go and you get the help. Nothing. Trust me. You can't get that out of somebody's head. Okay. No. They don't want a weak link. Okay. as much as they tell you, remember, I was on the senior non-commissioned officer side of this whole freaking nightmare. You know, we had kids that were overweight and they were on their way out the door. War came up. You're good enough to go die for your country, but in peacetime, you got to go because you're a fat body. Okay. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they came back and they didn't lose it because they were munching on MREs the whole time they were over there and they didn't lose an ounce of fat. Then when they got back, we threw them out. Okay. You're good enough to die for your country, but you can't be in peacetime and be a fat body. Because why? My commander cares about his scores. Okay. Mm-hmm. In his monthly USR report. Okay. His PT test. You're hindering all that stuff. Okay. Those are things that provide stress, not only to the service member, but to the family, the children, the parents. And don't get me started on Gold Star families.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Those families, Gold Star families, are the surviving member of a soldier, Marine, airman, naval person, whoever that has died for their country in combat. You just don't know how much pull a Gold Star mom has. I'm going to tell you something. You don't say no to a Gold Star mom.
No.
Okay? That woman can walk into the Pentagon and she's wearing her Gold Star patch right here or her necklace. Let me tell you something. She can go in there and talk to the president if she wants to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how important they are. Those families gave up the ultimate sacrifice. They gave their kid to the military.
Yeah.
And they died. And I'm going to tell you something. PTSD runs, it runs down every highway you can think of, from grandparents to parents to wives to children to the military member. It is a vicious highway. And I wanted people to understand that serving your country, being a patriot is great, but it comes at a cost. And the cost is greater than you. Okay, it's greater than me. And to take your time to thank a vet, you didn't have to even serve in the military. To thank a vet is the least a citizen of the United States can do for the people, the 3% that served. Okay, if we got 330 million people, only 3% throughout time has served in the military. You know, I think that we need to get back to thanking a vet, loving our country, stop all this absolute crazy BS that's going on. Because I'm going to tell you something, there's such a thing as being too free. And we're living it right now. Okay? When people are too free, that they think, hey, you know, I can do this, I can do whatever I want, you know, and then I watch these people burning flags and cussing out people, and there's no respect for authority and stuff like that. You know, it's just it makes me sick. It angers me. I just want to go full combat mode on these people because they have no idea what being an American is or being a patriot. You know, you're a patriot. You don't have to serve, but respect those who are willing to die for you. So you go out there and, you know, do all this crazy crap that's going on now, you know.
I think that's a big point that you made right there, though, Mike, is it's the respect. You know, like we live in a too free of a society, and a lot of it is because most of society doesn't respect, you know, even the ones, you know, those of us that came home, you know, we still went, we did it, you know, and even if they served and they never deployed or, you know, didn't, you know, if they were lucky enough to never have to go in harm's way and they were able to serve their time. But the amount, like, there is such a lack of respect, you know, for the country, for the flag, for the service. you know, in you know what we run into, and I think one of the biggest frustrations for me, that, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that I love my lifestyle and I don't want to be in a 3-aught and a cot, like I would just spend all day throat punching people.
Yeah.
And that's evidently, you know, it's not allowed in the civilian sector. It's
no, they frown
that's
on it.
been one of the things I was told. It's frowned upon, and I'm like, that's crazy. What are you talking about? Why are you not allowed to do that? Like, I think if we did a lot more of that, then people would maybe not be so the way they are. And you know, but I think it boils down to that respect, you know, and it's for me, it's like, obviously I hold way much more respect for anybody that served, whereas family members, you know, gold, like if they have an affiliation whatsoever, you automatically have my respect, unless you do something that's going to show me that you don't deserve my respect, and then I'm not going to respect you.
Yeah.
But that's not a norm. That's not, you know, that's not how it rolls. They have so much entitlement now. And they're like, well, we're a free country. We can do this. We can do that. Well, it's free because of us. And you know, you want to give me dirty looks because, you know, oh, guess what? You know, I can go in that priority parking spot right there, and I can do this, and I can get a discount here. And you're going to look down on me because I'm asking for that discount. Or, you know, they're like, all right, well, you're a retiree. Why are you asking for, you know, military discount? And I'm like, probably because I retired, and probably because I earned it, and probably because your little puke face that I'm not allowed to punch in the throat right now has a job.
Yeah.
Because I did what I did, my brothers and sisters and like, it's just, it's aggravating and agitating, obviously, right? It shows. I mean, I'm starting to sweat already just because it's such a huge transition. And, you know, and we think back, like we've been talking a lot about deployments, right? And our redeployment, you know, which we call it the redeployment, right? We're redeploying back home now. We're done with the deployment itself. And Mike, you had touched on this. The deployment itself was the easiest time you ever had in the whole time you served. Doesn't matter what branch you were in while you were on deployment. Now, the guys that struggled were the ones that didn't have the switch. And if you had the switch, you know what I'm talking about. You had to be able to reach back and go, I'm off. I can't, because it was the only way you were going to make it through. I can't sit here and think about my wife, my kids, my family, my mom. I can't think of all that.
You were going crazy.
Yeah.
You were going crazy.
And so what better way? And like, you know, Tara now, because obviously like we weren't together while we served. So she hears about my stories through stuff like this, through our conversations. She hears a lot more of my stories when I get with other veterans and people that you can talk to, because you like we had like all of my friends, like we begged to go on deployments because your life didn't get any easier. What do you worry about?
Yeah,
I don't want to die. I don't want them to die. I don't want them to die. Yeah. Life is simple. I'm not worrying about what bills aren't paid. Guess what? I'm in Iraq. If all my bills don't get paid, I don't care. That's a future me problem, not a right. Like you're like a blinders.
Yeah.
And I think a hard transition for us, you know, and is coming back. And, you know, and I remember like Mike had mentioned earlier, right? We all got debriefs. Hey, your wife's been doing this, you know, don't go home and don't beat your kids. Like you have to transition yourself back in because like Glenda said, hey, I've just done this for the last 6, 8, 9 months while you are gone. Like, I got this. Like, look at me. Like, I don't need you around. I don't like, bye, Felicia, go do your thing. Just let me keep my commissary privileges.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know that's rough, but it's one of those that's the mentality that we come back as the service member, because now we're looking at it and you lose that masculinity, that manhood of I'm the provider of this house. Yeah. And all of a sudden I'm coming in and what am I good for? That ID card, that fancy car, that, you know, like, and their ability to go to the commissary. Like,
yeah.
And that's the thing that we have to wrap around in our head. And I think that for anybody that, you know, is listening or watching that is thinking about, you know, I mean, we've already warned you, if you want to marry into the military, don't do it. But if you're going to, these are the things you need to remember, because that's the struggle of the service member and the, you know, because you're husband and wife. So when you come back, but when you've had to be husband and wife, mom and dad, And now you're coming back and all you've had to do is just not die. Here's the simplest job you ever had. Don't die.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't care if you don't even come back with all 10 fingers.
Yeah.
Just don't die.
Yeah.
Because, I need you to come back. And, but then you come back and you're like, okay, well, what is my point here? Like, what she's been doing it all. And now how in that integration is so vital to making those relationships during and after, deployments, making that work. And I'll tell you, it takes an amazingly strong woman, or spouse in any case, because like I know we have female service members in here, so their husband, it takes such a significant amount of just willpower
Yeah.
to be able to accomplish and process that. And at the end of the day, unless we're having conversations like we are right now, what recognition have you gotten, Glenda? How many certification letters, awards, promotions?
Well, I've got one, but not because of a spouse. Well, actually, two, but it has nothing to do with being a spouse. But I got Caregiver of the Year twice.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
From the Air Force. But, can I just say something? One of the things that Mike had said was, respecting our military and respecting that flag and being patriotic. Can I just put on my caregiver hat and just say this? My husband came back combat wounded, and we're dealing with a lot of things, and it is what it is. But it's because of people like Mike and Jason. Okay, I'm doing my camera backwards. Sorry. And Sir Grace and every other veteran that has served this country, that we get to enjoy this freedom. And what a disrespect to stomp on the flag, to burn it, when I'm sitting here taking care of one of America's heroes. How disrespectful. And the other thing is that I have gone to DC and I have advocated for my community, for my military and veteran caregiver community, through a huge nonprofit. It's the only one that focuses on military and veteran caregivers. It's the Elizabeth Dole Foundation.
Yes.
And while I was in DC, I got to go to the White House, and I was there when the 2014 RAND study was dropped. And I got to know all these statistics. But one of the things at the end of that week that we got to do as Dole Fellows, which are Dole Fellows are caregivers. Remember, less than a third of us are married. I do not look like the normal caregiver. The spouse is not the normal. It could be a mother, it could be a brother, it could be a sister, it could be a friend, it could be a neighbor. It's a caregiver. So keep that in mind. But we got to go to the Marine barracks, and we were there when TAPS, that is for the Gold Star families and their kids. We got to see all the kids that had just gone to Arlington Cemetery to see their parent, and they were coming to the Marine barracks for the Marine parade. And they announced the Dole Fellows first as the caregivers. Great, whatever. But let me tell you, there wasn't a single dry eye watching those kids walk through there, because you knew exactly what that meant. That is the sign of freedom. Those kids have to live with that for the rest of their lives. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm getting angry, but don't disrespect the flag. Don't disrespect our military, period, end of story. It is because of heroes. I'm sorry, that's my tangent, but I get so angry as a caregiver.
That's why we're doing this, Glenda. This is why Mike and I have started this channel, is because we need to bring back this, ferociousness, this vitality to let people know, one, it's okay. Because 9 times out of 10, and this is, Mike and I talked about this a lot, was, there's things that I can tell my wife she's not going to understand. She's not going to explain it, and I can't explain it in terms. Right. But then I can sit there till 2-3 in the morning with another veteran, whether we serve together or not, and have a conversation and understand and empathize, but most importantly, understand. And there's that connection when you're talking to somebody and they're listening, right? They're like, well, I'm listening. Mm-hmm. But then when that I'm telling you that same thing, but you're understanding what I'm saying.
And you don't have to explain.
Yeah. And you don't have to stop and and that's why we started this, is we want that fire. We want that tenacity of, the veterans and the veterans' families. That's what tonight's about, right? Is the post-care, the pre-care, everything that is involved of supporting a veteran. And you do it all. And that's why I asked, like, how many awards have you, because I know there are spousal awards, right?
Yeah.
But you don't get any recognition. You don't get any of these, I remember, I think they gave, because I was with my second wife when I retired, and I think she got some sort of like a letter of recognition for being a military spouse,
Yeah.
and she was only there for less than half of my career. So I was just kind of like, whatever,
Mhm.
but it was still, she deserved some recognition because I did go through a deployment and I did multiple training, did these things. Is the families, whether it's a spouse or not, right? The families trying to get that recognition that they deserve, because they struggle and suffer from PTSD. But guess what? They didn't go to combat. They didn't get this. So how are they going to get a claim that they're not? I'm telling you right now, I probably know more military wives, spouses, and children that have PTSD than I know any of them that were in combat. Because most of us in combat could turn it off.
Yeah.
She's like, I think you've had some aneurysms or something. Like, how do you not remember all this stuff that went on? And I'm like, because there's a switch. Like, I'm in work mode. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to, and it's funny. We do it with our videos on YouTube. I will say something and I watch the video after she edits it. I have no idea I even said it. And I'm laughing at myself. I'm like, that's hilarious. Where did that come from? Because it's like brain to mouth, no process whatsoever. And, that's the way that we work in the military. And, we have to do it that way. But the families don't get that option. Like,
No.
They still have to live that day to day. They're still worried about, hey, if I don't send the check to this place, my car's getting repoed, my lights are getting turned off, my kids aren't getting fed.
Right.
Like, all those stressors. And, they don't get enough, in my opinion, they don't get enough recognition, and then it's even more disgusting to see people disrespect the military, the flag, our country, like everything that we stand for, because they think they're entitled. You're entitled to a free throat punch. That's what you get today.
Yeah.
Well, like,
one thing I want to bring up, and somebody mentioned this, and we got an email today. Charles at Fallen Arkansas Veteran, he's been diagnosed with an aggressive type of cancer. They're not giving a lot of time, but please have him in. Now he runs the Fallen Arkansas Veterans. He'll tell you he never served, but he's dedicated his life to recognizing those fallen veterans, those fallen heroes from the state of Arkansas. And he puts on a ceremony every year recognizing more and more veterans that have given their life, ultimate sacrifice for our country from the state of Arkansas. And that's where my connection to him was, or is. But he has been diagnosed. It is an aggressive type of cancer. And that's basically the information I got. So please go there, and right there, Tamara just put in there from Heartland headquarters, prayers for Charles at Fallen Arkansas Veterans. So he's doing everything he can to take care of the veterans post-mortem, and I applaud him for that. I want to thank everybody for coming in. I know we went over a little bit, but that's okay. The conversation has to be had. Okay, so next week, here it comes, guys. What are the 10 best states for a veteran to retire in? Okay, the top 10 states to retire in if you are a veteran. Okay, you might be surprised. Okay, on which states aren't in the top 10. So we're going to talk about that next week, and we're going to talk about what kind of benefits do you or can you receive as a veteran. Okay, that's what we're going to do next week. And I've been thinking about this, and because I've been reading, Big Mike may not stay in the state of Oklahoma. because there's some good states out there that will take care of him. Okay, so I want that, and that might help people. Hey, I'm a veteran. I'm living in California. Okay, you're an idiot. Okay, but I want to go somewhere where veterans are appreciated. Okay, and that starts with your state. Okay, and not all of them are true red states or true blue states, but we're going to go over to the top 10 to help our veterans out. So that's what we're going to do next week. I hope you will join us here. And like I said, we try to keep it at an hour. If it don't, oh well, y'all need to go to bed then, right? Okay.
Right.
So any closing words, Battle Buddy?
I just want to say, Glenda, thank you so much for coming up. We
Yes.
appreciate your insight coming, like we know it from our side, right? But to have a spouse that can give it just, one, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your service and what you do. And thank everybody in this chat that's come in, all of your comments and supporting us. And guys, you see what we're doing, and we're trying to reach more and more every single day. So get this out to your friends, throw it on your Facebooks, your YouTubes, your Twitter, all the stuffs, put it all on all of them. And let's get some more people in here in conversations. And we look forward, Glenda, congratulations being our first guest on the panel, but there's going to be many more of you up here. So I love every one of you. Thank you. And make sure you always think of that.
Hey, what shirt size are you, Glenda?
I'm an extra large.
Are you really?
Yes.
You look shorter.
Oh, I'm short.
What size is yours? What size is yours, Jason?
I'm XL.
You're an XL
Extra
too?
large.
Okay. I got a surprise for you guys. It'll be in the mail.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, boy.
All right. Hey, guys. Glenda, again, like Jason said, thank you for coming on. Always welcome on the show. Could give your perspective. You've done your time. You've served your country, and we thank you for your service and your continued service. So thank you very much. Guys, remember, every Tuesday, 8 o'clock, we're going to be right here, unless my internet goes out again. And again, thank you, Battle Buddy. So
I got you, brother.
Top 10 veteran states, that's where you should be moving to. Get out of California. Get out of New York. Go to these states, and we'll tell you about them next week. All right, guys, we love you. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right.
Hot mic.